International news. In an address to the UN Security Council, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein says the youth are the prime victim of terrorism as a formidable challenge threatening the entire world. A Saudi-led coalition bombs Yemen's Houthi rebel positions and military bases in at least 20 airstrikes. And European leaders are expected to pledge rescue for migrants to try to address Europe's migrant crisis. Good evening and very warm welcome to the news. His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein said the world is facing the formidable challenge of terrorism and extremism, which threaten world peace and security, and the youth are its prime victims. The Crown Prince presided over the UN Security Council and addressed the issue of the role of youth in countering violent extremism and promoting peace. He said no country is immune from the threat of terrorism, whose enemy is humanity, regardless of religion, gender, age or nationality. Jordan currently holds the monthly rotating presidency of the UN Security Council for the second time during its 2-year stint as a non-permanent member of the Council. Here's a recording of the Crown Prince's address.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. معالي السيد بان كيمون الأمين العام لمنظمة الأمم المتحدة، أصحاب المعالي الوزراء، أصحاب السعادة المندوبين الدائمين ورؤساء وأعضاء الوفود، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أود أن أتقدم بالشكر إلى معالي السيد بان كيمون على جهوده لتحقيق أهداف الأمم المتحدة، ويشرفني أن أكون معكم اليوم بينما يتولى بلدي المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية رئاسة مجلس الأمن للمرة الثانية خلال عضويتنا الحالية. كما يسعدني حضور هذه الجلسة النقاشية حول الشباب في مناطق النزاعات ودورهم في صناعة السلام، فالعالم اليوم يواجه أحد أكبر التحديات، وربما التحدي الأعظم أمام الأمن والسلام الدوليين هو الإرهاب والتطرف، والشباب هم أولى الضحايا. الحضور الكرام، إننا نواجه اليوم آفة تهدد العالم أجمع، وما من دولة مستثناة من خطر الإرهاب، فعدوه الإنسان والإنسانية بصرف النظر عن الدين أو الجنس أو العمر أو الجنسية، فالكل معني بالحرب على الإرهاب. كما أن الأحداث والنزاعات وتبعاتها التي شهدها العالم في العقود القليلة الماضية جعلت أعدادا متزايدة من الشباب عرضة للوقوع في ظلمات التطرف وشراك المضللين، فالشباب هم الأكثر استهدافا بالتجنيد الطوعي وغير الطوعي من قبل الجيوش وجماعات المتطرفة والإرهابية. لذلك لا بد من اتخاذ التدابير السريعة لوقف تغذية نيران الإرهاب بدماء وأرواح شبابنا. الحضور الكرام، أكثر من نصف سكان العالم هم دون سن 30، غالبيتهم العظمى في الدول النامية، وتشير الدراسات إلى أن الفقر والبطالة والجهل وضعف العلاقات العائلية توفر بيئة جاذبة للفكر المتطرف والأفكار الظلامية. وإذا ما نظرنا إلى البيانات نجد أن وضع الشباب على المحك، ففي العالم ما يقارب 73 مليون شاب عاطل عن العمل، وأكثر من 14 مليون شاب نازح أو لاجئ، كما أن غالبية ضحايا النزاعات المسلحة هم من فئة الشباب. أيها الحضور الكرام، إن الشباب هم الأكثر تأثيراً على واقع الأمور وعلى مستقبلها، والأكثر تأثراً بالحاضر وظروفه، وقد تجلى ذلك واضحاً خلال الأحداث الأخيرة في منطقة العربية، وأنا شاب ضمن تلك الفئة العمرية، وأشارك في حوارات عن جيلي وعن التحديات التي تواجهه ووجوب تمكينه. وكثيرا ما يتم الحديث عن الشباب على أنهم شريحة مهمشة، واسمحوا لي بأن أقول إن الشباب ليسوا شريحة مهمشة، بل هم شريحة مستهدفة لطاقاتهم الهائلة، لثقتهم بأنفسهم وبأنهم قادرون على تغيير العالم. لذلك فهم يبحثون عن فرص تستثمر فيها طاقاتهم، وحين يصطدمون بغياب الفرص يتحول طموحهم إلى إحباط تستهدفه تلك الفئات التي تبحث عن وقود لأجنداتها. لا بد أن نلتفت إلى ذلك الفراغ الذي يستهدفه أعداء الإنسانية والحياة، ونملأه بطاقات الشباب لتحقيق طموحهم من خلال تحصين الشباب بالتعليم النوعي وفرص العمل المناسبة وأسس الحياة الكريمة. أيها الكرام، إننا في سباق للاستثمار في عقول الشباب وطاقاتهم، ويمكن للفكر الظلامي أن يصل إلى حيث لا يمكن للجيوش الوصول، فقد أعطت وسائل الاتصال الحديث كل من له صوت فرصة للوصول إلى كل أذن صاغية. إن الشباب هم الشريحة الأكثر تواجداً على الإنترنت، والجماعات المتطرفة تبث سمومها عبر وسائل الاتصال والتواصل الاجتماعي لاستمالة الضحايا لدخول عالمهم المظلم، مدعين مخاطبتهم بالدين والثواب من خلال أفلام مسجلة بتقنيات جاذبة، فينظر الشباب إلى تلك الفئات بانبهار وبأن جرائمهم إنجازات عظيمة. علينا أن نواجه هذا الخطر الذي يستغل طاقات الشباب لبناء عالم خال من الإنسانية، وأن لا نركز كل طاقاتنا لإجابة على ماذا نفعل، بينما روح الإجابة تكمن في كيف نفعل. ولذلك فعلينا تمكين الشباب من خوض معركة المستقبل بأنفسهم، بإعطائهم الأدوات ليخاطبوا جيلهم من خلال منصات التواصل الإلكتروني، ليشكلوا شبكات فكرية وتحالفات عملية تصل هذا الجيل وتقود الرأي الشبابي والفكر المبني على التعايش واحترام التنوع ونبذ العنف. أيها الحضور الكرام، إنني أعرب عن استعداد وترحيب المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية لاستضافة المؤتمر الدولي الأول حول دور الشباب في صناعة السلام المستدام بالشراكة مع الأمم المتحدة في شهر آب المقبل، لتعزيز قدرات الشباب صناع السلام في مواجهة التطرف والإرهاب. وأؤكد أن الشباب اليوم بحاجة إليكم، فأنتم من يرسم السياسات التي تؤثر في السلم والأمن الدوليين، ومن يتخذ القرارات التي من شأنها أن تشرك الشباب في عملية البناء بدلاً من أن يكونوا هدفاً للعنف والدمار. وجيلكم هو المسؤول عن رسم سياسات التعليم والتنمية والاقتصاد. فأمامنا اليوم أكبر جيل شاب عرفه التاريخ، وأكبر فرصة لبناء وتمكين مجتمعات قانونها العقل ودستورها الأخلاق ومبادئها السلام والمساواة، الاحترام والحوار، العيش المشترك وتقبل الاختلاف. تلك هي أسس إنسانيتنا المشتركة. شكرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Crown Prince Hussein also met UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to discuss Middle East developments and challenges facing the youth. In his address to the Security Council, Ban called for giving young people a seat at the negotiating table, stressing on their role in countering violent extremism. Ban also thanked Jordan for its current presidency of the Security Council and its contributions in many fields, including peace, development and human rights.
I'm honored by the presence of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Al Hussein bin Abdullah II of Jordan, which has so ably led the Security Council this month. His Royal Highness is the youngest person ever to chair a meeting of the Security Council. This is perfect for today's discussions. He is not yet 21 years old, but he is already a leader in the 21st century. I thank him for presiding over this important session. Shukran jazilan.
Interior Minister Hussein al-Majali said he will not allow any rallies or public activities being held on Jordanian soil on behalf of foreign groups trying to impose their agendas on the kingdom. He said legislation governing public assemblies and rallies required licensing of organizers and foreign financing according to valid legislative and legal frameworks. But he said no organization had yet applied with the Interior Ministry or concerned authorities to hold such rallies. The minister was commenting on reports that the so-called Muslim Brotherhood was planning a May Day rally to mark its 70th anniversary. In other news, a Saudi-led coalition bombed Houthi rebel positions and military bases in at least 20 airstrikes throughout Yemen. The raids targeted the Iran-allied rebels in Yemen's south and center as well as army units loyal to the group in the western Red Sea city of Hodeidah. The latest raids came 2 days after the alliance said it was winding down its military campaign. This report has more.
The Saudi-led air campaign against Yemen's Houthis goes on. Coalition warplanes bounded Houthi militiamen and military bases with at least 20 airstrikes throughout Yemen, despite Riyadh's announcement it was winding down its campaign. On Tuesday, the Arab alliance announced an end to its months-old bombing operation in Yemen, but strikes have not been halted. A Saudi spokesman said forces would continue to target movements of the Iran-allied Houthi militia. The Houthis said the airstrikes had so far killed 951 people and wounded over 3,000. Most of today's raids hit Houthi vehicles and gatherings on battlefields where the group is fighting supporters of President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi in 6 central and southern provinces. Other airstrikes hit military camps housing units loyal to the Houthis in the western Red Sea port of Hodeidah. One strike hit Houthi tanks near the port city of Aden in the south.
We hope for things in the country to calm down, and for Aden to become safe, and for the Houthi militants to leave Aden and go back to their areas.
In Ib, in central Yemen, residents reported an intense series of strikes on Houthi positions and weapons warehouses. Air raids on the capital have ceased in the last few days, but food and fuel shortages still grip the Arabian Peninsula's poorest country as the alliance maintains an air and sea blockade aimed at curtailing arms shipments to the Houthis.
These homes that have been destroyed and the victims that have fallen are a result of what the politicians have done to the Yemeni nation. 5 of the politicians have caused a political failure in Yemen, which resulted in a destruction that has affected almost 30 million Yemeni citizens.
The United States this week deployed additional warships off Yemen's coast, partly in response to a convoy of Iranian cargo ships in the Arabian Sea that the U.S. believes may carry arms bound for the Houthis. France's defense ministry said it deployed a minesweeper in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait off Yemen to secure freedom of movement there. Farah Ajlouni for the news at 10.
Airstrikes by the US-led coalition in Syria have killed 2,079 people, including 66 civilians, since the start of the aerial campaign against Daesh militants last September. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said a majority of the deaths, some 1,922, were Daesh fighters. The hardline group seized swathes of territory in Syria and neighboring Iraq, where it has also been targeted by US-led forces since last July. The observatory said 90 members of the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Nusra Front were also killed in the airstrikes. The United States said it takes reports of civilian casualties seriously and said it has a process to investigate each allegation. In Iraq, security forces battling fighters of Daesh are regaining some ground from the militant group in the western city of Ramadi. Security officials said Daesh fighters were being pushed back from sections near the military's Anbar Operation Command, but booby traps, snipers and suicide attacks were hindering government troops from recapturing other areas they lost last week. Officials added that the fighters had dug tunnels between houses so they could carry out hit-and-run attacks. A spokesman for Iraq's counter-terrorism forces said the troops had managed to recapture positions near the city center. In a separate incident, a car bomb blast killed 7 people and wounded 13 in Baghdad's northern Talibiyya neighborhood. European Union leaders were meeting in Brussels to find solutions for the migrant crisis in the Mediterranean. The meeting came after almost 900 went down on a single boat on Sunday. The leaders were expected to reverse a cutback in rescue operations to try to prevent record numbers of people drowning as they try to flee war and poverty in their countries. French President François Hollande said the attention should be focused on Libya, where the collapse of authority has made it a magnet for migrants. British Prime Minister David Cameron pledged his country's Navy's helicopter-carrying flagship and 2 other vessels to an operation he previously refused to support for fear of tempting more people out to sea. But he stressed those picked up would not automatically be given refuge in Britain.
Be offering today is the Royal Navy flagship HMS Bulwark, also with 3 helicopters and 2 other border patrol ships, all of which will be able to help with these operations, of course under the right conditions, and that must include that people that we pick up and people we deal with are taken to the nearest safe country, most likely Italy.
A humanoid robot with a myriad of facial expressions has impressed audience at an electronic fair in Hong Kong. The humanoid bust, which can realistically mimic human facial expressions, is controlled by 40 motors, utilizes cameras and voice recognition technology to see people and have conversations with them. This report has more.
Meet Han, a humanoid robot that can smile, frown, wink, or even act drunk, all at the push of a button. Wowing crowds at an electronics fair in Hong Kong, Han's myriad of facial expressions are controlled by 40 motors. These are covered with a unique human-like skin called frubber, short for flesh rubber. The ultra-realistic android can also recognise and interpret the expressions of real humans it comes into contact with. Grace Copplestone is from developers Hanson Robotics.
So we have cameras in his eyes and in his chest, which allow him to recognise people's faces. Not only that, but recognise their gender, their age, whether they're happy or sad.
Han is even able to hold simple conversations thanks to voice recognition software.
I think you are perfect man for my wife.
I don't have to do whatever you say. I have my own free will.
It was fun and it was interesting, like he's answering you. He's answering you to the point.
Hanson Robotics say human-like robots could serve a range of functions, especially where face-to-face communication is important. These include behind hotel reception desks and in entertainment venues such as museums and casinos. They also see the technology helping with medical training and as interactive care robots for the elderly.
We believe that putting a human face on a robot makes it far more approachable and efficient and effective in caring for older people.
Han, however, won't be the robot to get the job. Instead, the technology is being commercialised on Eva, a more approachable female robot, with plans to produce hundreds of models this year.
Daniel Ricciardo put his Red Bull Formula One car through its pace in Vienna. The Australian drove on the streets of Vienna in the RB8 and the Red Bull show run in front of the historic Vienna Rathaus. He's currently 7th in the Formula One standings with 19 points after 4 races. Ricciardo, in his second year with Red Bull, is 74 points behind the World Championship leader Lewis Hamilton. A year after hosting the Soccer World Cup, Brazil is set to stage a new international event, the Indigenous Peoples World Games. The inaugural games will be held from September 18th to the 27th in Palmas, in the northern state of Tocantins. Brazil's Sports Minister George Hilton said some 84 ethnicities would be represented among 4,000 athletes from 22 countries. Brazil has held a dozen indigenous games for its own natives since 1996 and decided to expand the games into a truly international event. Finally, a look at the weather. Cold tonight across many regions with scattered showers and hail forecast for the northern and central hilly areas. Winds will be northwesterly brisk, turning gusty at times. The chance for rain will taper off tomorrow as a slight rise in temperatures will create some fair weather across much of the country. It will be warm in the Jordan Valley, around 28 degrees at the Dead Sea. Also warm in the port of Aqaba with northerly brisk winds and choppy seas. The weatherman cautions against poor visibility due to dust. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To close, our top stories once again. In an address to the UN Security Council, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein says the youth are the prime victim of terrorism as a formidable challenge threatening the entire world. A Saudi-led coalition bombs Yemen's Houthi rebel positions and military bases in at least 20 airstrikes. And European leaders are expected to pledge rescue for migrants to try to address Europe's migrant crisis. And that's the end of tonight's news. My name is Rad Liptosh. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night.